Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm getting to know a new art supply. Now, whenever I get a new supply to play with, I like to take a little time just to get to know it, see how it interacts and behaves with other art supplies that I have. And I'm playing with the new Tim Holtz Distress crayons today. And I'm also going to be comparing them to these Crayola slick sticks that I have that are a kid's art supply, but they're just in these very primary colors as opposed to these really awesome bright colors over here. I'm going to be playing with them in my art journal and I'm testing it out. I'm going to see, how do these things work with pens? Can pens write on top of them? How does it work with, can I stamp on top of it? Will it react to water? All those things, just trying to get a feeling for how these things work. And along the way, I'm going to build a very busy art journal page because you know me, I kind of want to make sure that every bit of white space has got some color on it. Well, I decided to compare the Distress crayons to something that they reminded me of called slick sticks from Crayola. Really remind me of each other, so I'm going to see if they really are about the same thing. So creamy goodness coming out of the Crayola slick sticks. Boy, is that going to be a tongue twister for this video. And then here's the Distress crayon, and it's actually even a little bit creamier. And I'm going to see how they smear, because one of the nice things is these things will smudge if you put a little finger elbow grease into it. And I'm going to take a different finger and I'm going to smear the other one. And they both smear well, so on that fact, they seem to be really similar. Now, I mentioned that I've had these a really long time, or a while. It's actually a really long time. And I'm notorious for not putting caps on things all the way. And when I used the blue, it felt really different. It didn't feel nearly as creamy until I looked at it and I realized why. This one is really dried out. It's shrunken down. It doesn't fill the tube as much. I must not have had the cap all the way on that one. So we're going to count that one as not something I'm going to compare, because basically but look, it still smears. It still works the same, even though it's fairly dried out. But I am going to try and keep the caps on these things just so they stay wonderful and creamy. I'm going to play around with some of the different colors and compare them. One thing that I really do like, though, is that the Distress crayons come in more colors and more of my kind of colors. I really like that rainbow bright kind of thing. Now, the other thing is these react to water. So I'm just dipping my finger in some clean water and then smearing and spreading this around. I'm going to try this with the slick sticks, and they smear too. I actually do like the Distress crayons just a little bit more. They smear just a little bit better with the water. And again, it's more of the colors that I really like. So that's kind of swaying me that direction. But this art journal page is all about me kind of exploring and seeing what these things do. So I'm going to keep trying with different colors, playing with water with them, and just seeing how they feel and get to know them. Now, the whole point of this art journal page is for me just to get comfortable and familiar with the Distress crayons. And as long as I have the slick sticks out, I'm going to continue to compare them for a little bit just to see if there really is a difference that matters to me on it. Right now, so far, it's really the color that is the big difference for me with the Distress crayons, and they are a bit creamier. They do spread just a little bit better. I'm going to keep mixing up bits here and there, and quite frankly, I'm kind of addicted to putting the water on my fingers. It kind of gives me all the benefits of that feeling of finger painting and smearing without really making a big old mess. And I'm falling enough in love with this background and this sort of dreamy, hazy color goodness going on that I'm thinking I might turn one of these into a spark of artspiration. And what that is a free downloadable printout that I give away in my newsletters. Now, I only put them in my newsletters, and if you'd like to get it, all you need to do is get signed up for my newsletter. They're completely free. So where can you find the link to get signed up? It might show up here on the screen, assuming all the technology is working just as planned, or it's down below in the description on the video, or you can also find it over on the blog at acolorfuljourney.com. And if I dip the tip of the Distress crayon right into the water directly before I write, it goes on even more easily because it's going on kind of damp and ready to be smeared right away. So you can use these things all sorts of different ways, I'm finding, and I haven't found one I don't like yet. So just about finished up with the page here. I'm just going to put in a few colors here and there. The whole wet water smearing smudging thing I'm really liking. You can layer colors, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. And as soon as I hit it with more water, it does reactivate. So even if I think it's dry, if it gets hit with more water, it does reactivate again. Now all this white space that's left on here, I could leave it white, but no. I'm going to put some color on it because it's an opportunity to get more of the rainbow all over the place. But I am going to do this more as the crayon style instead of doing it with the water or smearing. That way I can almost have the look of drawing or writing with a crayon, also with the dreamy, watery, colory version of it too. So I'm starting to think of what I'm going to do next on this art journal page. Will things work on top of it? Can I stamp on it? Or is this too waxy that it won't take ink? Well, I'm going to test it out. I grabbed some rubber stamps and some archival ink, and I am just going to get a nice amount on this rubber stamp, and I am just going to push it right down. And then guess what is going to happen is I didn't stamp it very well. It's very imperfect. And that is not because of the distress crayons. It is because my paper is all bumpy and warped because there's something of texture underneath it. Because when I stamped that one, it stamped just fine. And it's looking like this stuff is stampable. No problem putting a permanent stamp pad right on top of it. I will say though that I did give it some time to dry in between when I finished with the water and when I started stamping. Just because the phone rang, I got called away and distracted, not because there was any kind of patience involved. Well, as I'm finishing up the stamping, now I'm starting to wonder, will pens work on this? Can I write on top of this, or is it going to be too oily or too much like an oil pastel that pens won't write on top of it? Well, it's time to test that out. Well, the distress crayons will write over distress crayons, but they're a little too translucent for what I'm looking for. So I'm going to try out some of my other pens. And I almost think of those distress crayons as almost like a pen because, well, they're shaped like one. So this one's a Posca pen and it writes just fine, but I do pick up little bits of the color on the tip. So after I'm doing some writing, I kind of wipe it off onto a piece of paper. That way I don't have any of the color sticking with it permanently. Now this one is a Sharpie poster paint pen, and I am writing right over parts of it, whether it's a part that has a lot of distress crayon on it or a part that was really sort of watered down or turned that watercolored and smeared around. It worked very well, but had the same problem of the Posca pen where a little bit of the color got picked up on the tip. Now this one's a Pip pen, and it writes wonderfully on top of it. After the white ones, where you can easily see the colors picked up, I'm now figuring I need to wipe off any pen that I use it because it's going to pick up some of the color that's on there. Now this one's a Liquitex paint pen, and it's a little more, it disappears a little bit more than the white. I wanted to try different colors on it, but I have to say so far, I think white is my favorite with it. The pen worked just fine on it, just didn't pop quite the way I was looking for. But what if I brought in something like a ballpoint pen? Well, this is a plain old pen that I'm testing there to make sure it actually worked from an office supply store, and it's writing over this just fine. Anywhere where there was a lot more of the distress crayon or the slick stick, it didn't write as well, and it kind of picked up little bits of it on the tip of it. Anywhere where it was more watercolored, where I'd done a lot of smearing it around with water, it wrote very easily over it. So ballpoint pens, I think, are going to work pretty well on this. Now, I do know that ballpoint pens don't write very well on wet paper, so that's why I'm glad that I got that phone call and I got called away so that everything was completely dry before I brought out the pens. Good old plain old Sharpie marker, yep, it works just fine over it, really over any part of it. Notice I am cleaning off the tip on that scrap paper every now and then so that none of the color transfers to the pen. Well, now I need a little bit of stenciling. I'm going to bring in my Finding Your Tribe stencil because I want some little people walking around this incredibly busy page. I am using just some cut and dry foam there to act sort of as a little stamp pad in my fingers, so it makes it easy to stencil with. And I found that if I'm going to be using an ink pad to do some stenciling, the cut and dry foam works probably my favorite of the different things, and I like that better than a cosmetic sponge when I'm doing stenciling with an ink pad. Can you do this with a cosmetic sponge though? Absolutely, and I highly encourage you to use whatever you have available as you're playing. Part of the fun for me when making an art journal page, especially one like this, is I don't really have an idea where it's going when I start. I'm just playing and seeing what the different supplies behave like, and there's inspiration in that. So, and I kind of think of that as inspiration from my muse, which is why I chose those words off of my mixed media mail stencil that's available from Stencil Girl products. So I had that nagging feeling that there was something missing, just a little bit more was needed, and I thought that was going to be it for me. That was going to be the finishing touch. But no, when I thought I needed a little bit more, I kind of meant a lot more. I needed more pattern and texture going on because this page really truly just wasn't busy enough. Not at all. So this last bit of pattern is coming thanks to Gwen LaFleur Stencil, also available over at Stencil Girl Products. And well, thanks for joining me for today's play as I'm getting to know distress crayons. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you know somebody that you think would enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with them. Of course, you can find me and more of my adventures over on my blog at colorfuljourney.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook and all those kinds of places, and there are links down below to everything in the video. Thanks so much for being a part of this colorful journey.